Dorothy. Dorothy from Kansas.
I'm originally from Mexico. My first language is Spanish. My dad was the one who was obsessed with us to only speak in English because he says, you guys are going to need it one day. Dick, he's a 6'2" guy, an attorney, a professional. Dick had a very aggressive reaction of things, screaming, being intimidating. My dad, he was scared for my life. Subconsciously remembering, I am a single mom, I am Hispanic, I have all these challenges, it's going to be extremely hard. And I should be grateful it gave me my son.
And now a massive legal battle has erupted, with Dick seeking sole custody of Billy. I'm Jenny Lynn.
I'm Jen.
And I am Cynthia. And I am in high conflict hell today.
Cynthia, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you. So if you know, you know, but let's make sure you're in the right place, Cynthia. I'm in the right place because I understand that court abuse is not just happening here in Washington, but is happening across the country, and specifically in Kansas, where you are. Jen, how do you know you're in the right place?
I know I'm in the right place because I know that abusers can use court abuse with nothing but allegations and walk away winning.
Yeah. Cynthia, how do you know you're in the right place?
You know, you're in the right place if instead of the court giving you a voice, you found two lovely ladies across the country that actually can give you a voice, and it feels good.
Oh my gosh. Why is that the best answer I've ever heard?
I know. Goodness.
Okay, as we were just talking about, Cynthia, you're currently in Kansas.
Correct.
And where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from Mexico. I was born and raised in a border town. And yeah, most of my life in Mexico and ended up in Kansas. Out of all the places.
Did you click your heels 3 times?
Yep, to come to Kansas like Dorothy. I have my red heels.
Oh my gosh. And I do want to say Cynthia is an alias. Maybe we should have picked Dorothy for you.
Maybe.
Oh, dang it.
Ooh. Hey, we can still call you Dorothy.
Yeah, you guys can. Easy to remember. Dorothy.
This is a real-time
Real-time change.
Sorry, Dorothy. Looks like you're still in Kansas. 50-50 statutory, but nothing here is balanced.
Dorothy. Dorothy from Kansas. Dorothy, how long have you been living in high conflict hell?
Oh, my goodness. It feels like forever. Way too long. But if we put it a number, it will be for my son's age. So it's going to be close to 6 years.
6 years is a long time, and I'm going to recap real quick where you are currently at in this high conflict custody case. So you have 2 children, but the subject of this case is your 6-year-old son, who we're going to call Billy, and that's also an alias. You and Billy's father were never married. Your other child, who we're going to call Olivia, she is from a previous marriage. But with Billy's dad, we're going to call him Richard, which convenient for us because the nickname for Richard is Dick. And let me say, Dick lives up to his nickname. Dick is a white male attorney in Kansas who loves referring to himself in the third person, giving his son haircuts, which we'll get into, yelling at teachers and therapists, getting himself banned from schools, and explaining to you, Dorothy, why everything you do is wrong in what he calls a kid's newsletter. So we're going to get into the full history of your relationship with Dick today. Billy was born about 2 years into the relationship, and when Billy was around 1 year old, you left after what you described as a serious domestic violence incident. In Kansas, custody is statutorily presumed 50-50. But it is important to note that what you were told by multiple attorneys is if that domestic violence wasn't directed at Billy and only directed at you, it wouldn't be enough to overcome the statutory 50-50 in Kansas. So you signed a 50-50 parenting plan with Dick, and your current schedule is a 2-2-3 split. Billy has 2 days with one parent, 2 days with the other, then 3 days back with the first parent. So the biggest issue right now, today, 5 years later, is that Billy has been in play therapy, which is therapy designed for children of a young age, where they explore thoughts and feelings through playing. Both you and Dick, Dorothy, originally agreed to the therapist, but recently Dick withdrew his consent to this therapist. So you filed a motion asking the court to continue therapy, and now a massive legal battle has erupted, with Dick seeking sole custody of Billy. So with all of that background, let's talk about your current family unit, because you are remarried, and I want to talk about who else is a part of your day-to-day life.
Yes. So I have my son, Billy. My daughter actually is from my first marriage. And I married very young, and we had her pretty much right away after getting married.
So did that marriage happen in Mexico, or did that marriage happen in the U.S.?
Happened in the U.S., actually. So we met when I was like in 21, 22, and then moved to Kansas. So we got married. I ended up pregnant, which the plan was 5 years later. It happens literally 5 months later.
And now we have Olivia, so that's great.
And now we have Olivia, but she's amazing. I cannot imagine my life any other way.
Yeah.
And yeah, just things happen in that marriage. And then he decided to go separate ways. He said to me, I cannot give you the marriage I think you deserve. Thank God, not a high conflict. But living in a place where you're by yourself, and I feel my world fell apart.
Yeah.
And what do we do when we are lonely? And at that time, the online dating was a thing when I'd never dated that way, the online dating. So I thought I can meet people really easily. And that was my first mistake.
Well, we've gotten to know some things that have gone on in your high conflict situation. And I am so sorry that this is your experience. And I am so sorry that we understand as well as we do, because it is the same story over and over again. I can make allegations at you as much as I want. I don't have to provide any evidence. The judge or the commissioner will just look at this as if it is a high conflict situation and put things in place that do not benefit the child. So I'm sorry that you're here, but you've got some juicy stuff for us to talk about.
Right? And with that, I'm going to rewind. And I want to ask you about growing up in a border town and what that was like for you. Because culturally here in the U.S., as two white women, I'd love to get an understanding of what that was like growing up in a border town and then moving to Kansas.
Sorry, Dorothy, looks like you're still in Kansas. 50-50 statutory, but nothing here is balanced.
So yeah, I did grow up in, the border town, Mexico and U.S. Back and forth, it's just who I am. My first language is Spanish. My mom always spoke Spanish at home. My dad was the one who was obsessed with us to only speak in English because he says, you guys are going to need it one day. Growing up, my dad will never let us read a book in Spanish. Disney books or things like that. Disney movies, they're all going to be in English. And when I moved here, my English was extremely broken because education always been in Spanish, writing, reading, speaking, my first jobs, everything was. And so coming in here, everything was a challenge. From my first jobs, I wanted to go back to school, pursue a master's degree. And when I got in, they were telling me your English academically needs to improve a lot because, the academic writing, you have to be more, grammatically correct, the pronunciation, and if you want to pursue. So it was always a challenge. I always had that on the back of my head on everything, including sometimes right now, even though after 13 years here, sometimes I catch myself still feeling insecure in my personal life, including with my children. Sometimes they are correcting me, Mom, you have to pronounce X, Y, and Z like this. I was like, tomato, tomato.
Well, and I want to understand how this has impacted your ability to follow what's going on in the court system, because even with these legal documents, and English is my mother language, it's a challenge to follow all of these documents, and how feeling insecure with language might impact your co-parenting relationship.
And as I've pointed out, Dick is an attorney. And I've had the luxury of reading his messages to you. And all I'll say is that English is my first and only language. The way he writes and the way he talks to you, I need a dictionary to follow what he is trying to say. A walking red flag. Number 1, he talks about himself in the third person. Number 2, he talks like he's writing a legal letter to you every single time he communicates to you. And the interesting thing to me is that in law school, you're taught that when you're trying to communicate a point to another party, that writing like a lawyer is counterproductive to any communication. It's condescending. And when people or attorneys write like that, it's with exerting power, or the attempt to exert power and control.
To create fear.
So when Dick writes to you in his lawyer speak, he also brings up the fact that English is your second language and weaponizes it time and time again. And I'm going to read just a couple of these messages, and I don't even think this gives it full justice, but I'm gonna read it. So May 21st, 2022, Dick writes, if you sincerely want to improve our communication, you might start by working with a translator, improving your English, or being more thoughtful and less emotional when composing messages. November 14th, 2022, Dick writes, I am not responsible for your English reading comprehension, Dorothy. So those two messages highlight how he flat out weaponizes the English language against you. In writing, he wrote this down. If he was writing things like that, I can only imagine what he was saying to you while you guys were dating. So can you talk about how he brought up or used the English language against you when you guys were dating?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things where he started using in our conversations, and he kind of was trying to praise me, but at the same time put it in my head an insecurity. Like, that's so amazing that you teach this class. Wondering how do you do it with your accent? Or do they ever say anything about your writing? Sometimes it has a lot of grammatical errors. I'm surprised you're in a college setting. And back then, naive, stupid me, I was just like, oh, he's being nice. He's making me a compliment. But
you were not stupid. It makes you open, loving, caring, excited. It makes you all kinds of things. Stupid is not one of them.
And also point out how quick it was. So you separated from your ex-husband in October-ish, and you met Dick pretty quickly, a few months later.
Yeah, I met him a couple months later. And, I was just left with, I can't give you basically the love, the affection. And then I find this person who's expert love bomber. And, it just started with, let me take you to dinner. Let me do this for you. Let me do that. And, just being over the top. And, something I never experienced before. And I was just like, oh, my gosh, maybe it was meant for me to be separated, for me to start all over. He was doing and saying the right things. And I was like, well, not all relationships are perfect, right? And maybe some people will fight. But then thinking back in retrospective, the fights were absurd. He was just upset because, you didn't put Diet Cokes in the fridge and I was coming home. Or, I don't like dishes in the sink. You do this to piss me off. And then it was turned into, you don't care about me. You don't appreciate anything I do for you. And then I started getting the guilt. I was like, oh, maybe I am not doing enough. Maybe I am.
Hey, can I ask too, and I don't mean to cut you off, but and do you prefer Hispanic, Latina, Mexican? Because because I don't want to refer.
Oh, any Hispanic,
Any?
Latina. Yeah, that's
Okay. So traditionally, right? Did you grow up in a house where your mom was taking care of your dad to the fullest?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was the thing. And he even mentioned it. Hispanic got it right. He said, your mom educate you right. And I was just like, why? Like, you should listen more to your mom. Like,
Your mom told you, I'm telling you, and you can't even put the Diet Coke in the fridge, you idiot.
Right.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah. And then, but now that I talk to my mom about the situation, she's like, no, I wish I had conversations with you about that's not one thing. It is being raised by, oh, you serve your husband because you love him, but you don't have to. And, they have the capabilities to do their own things as well. And you do it out of love, out of respect, that's how my grandmother, my mom, my aunts, I've seen them. But they're also strong women that now they realize, okay, it's not my responsibility to do everything for you. You have to do and give something to the household, to the relationship. But I grew up seeing that. And with that idea, you serve your partner. But being by myself in a city that barely knew or still was knowing at the time, I needed that support and that help too. But I also felt I couldn't ask for it because then it was going to be another reason for a fight.
A weapon.
A weapon, exactly. And I never left when I should, but even though there was in my mind, some things were not right. And I would subconsciously be remembering, I am a single mom, I am Hispanic, I have all these challenges, it's going to be extremely hard. And I should be grateful that this person was looking at me for, a relationship. Like, he made me feel so insecure for so long that if I left that relationship, there was no way I was going to be able to find an attorney, a professional, a person who, is so successful. And I should be very grateful to be with him. And I was just like, I should have. Not imagining my life different because it gave me my son. And that's another level of gratefulness in life. And every time I talk about him, I get a little emotional. He saved my life, my son. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't plan about this.
Sorry. Why do you think Billy saved your life?
When he was born, it was 3 weeks after my dad had passed away from COVID. And he was everything to me, my dad. And my dad left this world very worried about my situation that I was at that time. He was scared for my life. He advised me to leave that relationship. The last experience I had in person with him was not what I wanted.
Yeah.
He was in town visiting for holidays, and he experienced a very bad thing where he heard and saw how Dick was treating me. My dad was a small guy, and he was short, and Dick, he's a 6'2" guy. But my dad wasn't afraid. And my dad was like, I need to talk to you right now. And he took him outside, and he says, I don't like the way you're speaking to my daughter. I don't like the way you are being condescending and expecting you to do things to her. I don't care if she's pregnant with your son. You need to understand this is disrespectful. And my dad was very brave to that. I was very scared when he did that because Dick had a very aggressive reaction of things, screaming, being intimidating, getting very close to people. He used that a lot. And he actually cried to my dad and say, like, blaming everything on me, that I was not being considerate to his mental health and health situation, that everything was turned into my fault. And, the last day that my parents were in town, driving them to the airport, my dad begged me to, come with us. I'll buy your plane ticket and we'll figure it out. He said, I don't feel good you staying by yourself in that house anymore. And my daughter at that time, she went to spend the holidays with her dad's side. So it was just by myself. I should have said yes. But inside of me, I was like, I have to stay, Dad. I can't do this again. I had in my head another failed relationship, I feel a failure. I feel if I leave, pick up and leave now. and I was pregnant with my son. And that was the last time I saw my dad in person, unfortunately. And the reason I said my son saved my life is because when he was born, just 3 weeks after my dad had passed away. It's just that experience. I can't describe it enough with words, how like he has that feisty firework personality that my dad had. They have the same exact ears, like little things like that I see in my son, that it's just a daily reminder. My dad's still here, he's always here. And I just stay with that every single day. It's like my motivation for do everything for my kids.
And you get to teach your son the same values and the treatment of people that your dad taught you.
Yes.
And I think your son is not getting that same thing on the other side. And I think we should talk a little bit about how Dick treats people.
Dick's a walking red flag.
Right. And I do want to read something that I've had the
luxury.
the luxury of looking into some of your communications.
Very fun.
And this message that I'm about to read it was sent when Billy was only 2 years old.
Yeah.
After 5 years, you still haven't learned how to be compliant and thereby improving your co-parenting relationship, and instead you still think others should always adapt to you. You're wrong. Boundaries must be set. So that was sent when Billy was 2, and he's telling you in the last 5 years, you haven't learned to be compliant. And that word compliant to me reeks of control, abuse, manipulation, all of the things. And before we get into what he's doing to you now, actually, can you talk a little bit about Dick's diagnosis and when that happened in your relationship? Because I do think the portion of like that medical trauma / guilt of supporting someone through something that major. And so
Yeah, he had something that is called a pituitary tumor. It was actually non-cancerous, but it was a tumor that was growing in his brain. And all of a sudden, he had like something similar of an aneurysm where his tumor was bleeding and caused him to go to the ER from like one day to another. In that period, I was really considering ending the relationship. And this is how life works, right? You have a tumor and you're close in your pituitary gland. We need to operate. We need to take it out. But there could be consequences after that because the pituitary gland is very sensitive. So long story short, they did the surgery. His family was here. His mom, his sisters, which I still, till this day, have a great relationship with them. They're part of Billy's life. Thank God. They are lovely people.
can I ask you, what did his mom say to you when...
Yeah, that was the interesting part, because when we were staying at his house, he just got his surgery and he was recovering in the hospital. We left the hospital, we went home to get some rest, and we'll come the next day to the hospital with him. His mom came to town and we opened a bottle of wine, we just started chit-chatting, and she was just telling me, please do not let his health condition to be an excuse to treat you poorly. That's exactly her words. They're still, engraved. And I was just like, what do you know? What did he have said? And he's like, it's the way he had treated me all these years. He, very similar to his dad, how his dad treated me. So I started understanding that came from his own traumas, his own, upbringing. But, she just mentioned that. And as soon as we had that conversation, her phone started blowing up with text messages. And it was him. He was texting his mom saying, how dare you poisoning my partner's brain? You're trying to her to leave me. I just heard everything you said to her. And we were so lost. And we realized he had cameras all around. And he was listening from the hospital bed in his phone our conversation. That level of control,
Insane.
that level, that's when I should have gone. This is insane. The next day we come to the hospital, he's acting like he's sorry. He's like, I'm just having all these feelings, all these emotions, try to downplay it. It's just the surgery. And he's like, my emotions are all over the place. The hormones are not in the right place. And so it was always an excuse. That was the last time he actually talked to his own mother until this day.
They never spoke again.
Never spoke again. And
But you still have a relationship with his mother.
yes. And for me, I was not understanding. I grew up with a family where there's always going to be drama in their family, but family is family. You have to be there and have to respect each other, especially your parents. You know, I spoke to my parents with all the respect, so I didn't comprehend that relationship. And he used that. He's like, well, you don't understand. You don't know my mom. You don't know the way I was raised. And I was being respectful of it, so I didn't push for that relationship to be mended. But I knew that was a red flag.
Red flag, red flags, red
He victimized himself.
Do you know this term, Dorothy?
I did not.
When you are a dick and you turn yourself into a victim, then you victimize yourself. And it's so amazing that his name is Richard.
Right? This all's falling into place just
Yeah.
perfectly.
I like finding out that there is also a Dick Senior. So there's Dick Senior, Dick Junior,
Little dick, big dick, just all the dicks.
So let's talk about, you said that your dad had pulled him aside the last time that you saw him in person to talk to him because he didn't like the way that he treated you. Was there any really big, serious events that happened that had you fearing for your physical safety that you can share?
Yeah, he would do a lot of intimidation, right? I'm a 5'1" girl. Okay. And he was a 6 foot tall, 6'2" guy. Well, he will just get really close and I will just like start, shaking. And I'm like, okay. Things like instead of punching me, he will punch a wall and it will make a hole in the drywall. Or if he was carrying a coffee mug, he will just throw it. But he will say, I didn't throw it at you. And I was like, but I know eventually it was going to be towards me at the end. So one of the incidents that my dad noticed is like he heard a big crack and he had just broke this picture frame. But towards the end, when I decided to leave, it was when it actually became physical.
Okay.
I already have told him I was going to leave. And I think that was a huge trigger in him.
You had your child, Billy.
I already had a child, yes. He was barely 1. I would have left way before that. But, just that fear, starting all over again. He was always telling me, you're the problem. You're leaving me. You're going to show people you're the problem. Because you have already one marriage. You got divorced. You're going to have 2 different baby daddies. You're guaranteeing being by yourself forever. And he said that many times. And so I believe it.
Nick brings that up in your messages.
He does.
Now.
Till this day.
That, the amount of children there with different baby daddies in your home and the instability that, like, it is so condescending and so rude.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I've noticed some things in documents that have been shared with us about talking about your English language. And I have to say, this should not matter, but your English is incredible.
Right?
Oh,
Shouldn't
thank
matter.
you.
It doesn't matter, but also
Incredible.
you are clear, you are concise.
And according to him, he can't understand what I'm trying to convey because my English is so broken. Have you read the messages? He had used it as like, I think if you really want to improve our co-parenting communication, you should take extra English classes. And I'm just like,
No, Dorothy. He doesn't say if you want to improve our co-parenting relationship. I've read it several times where he has called it your co-parenting relationship, Dorothy. He has called it yours.
Yeah.
It's your fault that our co-parenting relationship is high conflict. Nothing about it is about him. So he speaks about himself in the third person.
Yeah.
And that all of these things are your fault.
And that is like what it blows my mind with all this, that you two see it and live similar experiences. But when I bring this stuff in the legal system and to attorneys to interview, I get to still feel that I'm the problem too. I get to still hear from attorneys that I'm about to hire, oh, but they have, when they go and present the case to the court, these people have a high conflict situation. These people have a high conflict communication. Like, they're talking about it that we both have an issue.
Yep.
When
Yes.
I'm just like, are you not reading those messages? Who's being the dick? I mean, obviously there's clearly
Dick.
Richard
Yeah.
Dick, but who's being an asshole in those text messages? And I still feel that they don't see it or they don't want to see it. And that's the frustrating part.
And that combined, right? The way he communicates with you now, combined with your lived experience of the actual abuse, right? The cups throwing, the picture frames breaking next to you,
Holes in the drywall.
holes in the drywall. And you haven't even discussed yet the incident that actually led you to leave.
Are you comfortable talking about it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All these years of therapy have helped to talk
Perfect.
about it.
We're also going to put in disclaimers here ahead of telling your story about suicide and domestic violence. The suicide number is now 988. So if you need it or you know somebody that needs it, dial 988 24 hours a day. You can also text them.
So that when I left, he knew I was going to leave. He knew that it was coming to an end. I was just getting to that point. And we were having a discussion about what you're going to take, what you're not going to take. No, this is all mine. You should just leave. And so he started shoving me into a room. And as I'm trying to walk away, he grabbed me by my arms and just physically shoved me inside of a room and locked me. And it was so hard, the shoving and the grabbing from the arms, that I have, I still have pictures. I have bruises all over my arms and kind of like scratches. And, back then I was justifying saying, well, he didn't punch me. Well, he didn't hit me actually in the face or struck me. But that was physical abuse.
Absolutely.
So when I started recording, and 6 years later, I don't want to listen to it. I just have it in case.
It's the recording.
The recording is the whole conversation and you can hear the shoving and him closing the door and literally yelling through his lungs, if you dare to leave this room, I'm going to hurt you so bad, you're going to regret it. He's like, I'm going to be in my room and shut it if you dare to come close to my room. I'm going to fucking kill myself. And then he started throwing threats. He was always walking around with saying those type of things when he get really angry. And it was like a fear. But that day I just grabbed my baby. I had a suitcase bag and my car ready to go just in case. My daughter, those days, she was at her dad's. It was the week that she was going to be at her dad's, thankfully. And I just grabbed my stuff and grabbed the baby and left. And he said, if I will leave, he would, commit suicide. He will do this, he will do that. And I left, and then I called the 1-800 suicide line, try to talk to people. It's like, hey, I don't know if he's going to do anything. And actually, that was helpful because they were saying they were going to send someone, but normally they ask me, do you want to file a police report? I don't know, I still to this day why I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. And especially coming from a different country, the resources available, what we have, all those things, doesn't matter how educated or how proficient you are in the language. There's so many resources that sometimes we don't know that exist there for us, and that's what we don't.
Or how to use them.
Or
when to use them. Or why to use them. Or if you'll get in trouble if you use them.
I was going to
Or
say.
if it will be used against you if you go to therapy. Or if it'll be used against you if you call the police. Or if it'll be used against you if you record something because you're in fear of your life. Or maybe if somebody is recording something to try to get you to react. There is so much to it that it is not simple. So this doesn't have anything to do with you or a level of education or your ability to navigate in the world. This is hard for everyone. You have additional barriers that make it so hard for you to make choices. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then would you think about your kids? I don't want my kid to grow up, even though I think he is not the best role model and example for my son. No. But if I call police, this is going to backfire, or this is going to hurt my son more than actually help the situation.
Dick has Billy a lot. What does the parenting plan say?
So the parenting plan says that it's 50-50 residential and legal custody. So custody and Kansas have adopted the 50-50 preference.
Statutorily. So, can you walk me through then after you left, going and trying to find an attorney and telling them about the abuse and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, till this day, I think, trying to interview new attorneys, it's so hard to find someone who will actually consider everything, including the domestic violence situation, the emotional abuse, physical abuse. But when I was going through attorneys, it's explaining that every single attorney would stop me and say, wait, we can't use that. Because the abuse was... when I talk to attorneys about the physical abuse or the videos or the emotional abuse, I even have a picture of his cell phone. I took a screenshot of, he literally Googled on his phone the consequences in the Kansas law related to emotional abuse. So he knew what he was doing. And so when I was talking to the attorneys that I was trying to interview to hire one, they all told me, we won't use any of the domestic violence because, one, you don't have any police reports. Even you have videos and they're recent, you didn't report it. And the abuse was towards you, was not towards the kid. So the judge are not even going to care. And I was told by all of the attorneys that I interview. And so that was extremely disappointing. And I feel like I didn't have any option other than co-parent with him. And I didn't have the money to fight him in court to get more parenting time. I was just told by attorneys, since Kansas was a 50-50, I was just going to lose thousands of dollars. And because of the abuse was towards me, that was not going to be even helpful to get more custody. And then we were talking about, he was an infant. He was still breastfeeding. He was still not even walking. All this stuff, it was just so painful to hear that I was like, I shouldn't have left. Even I was just physically abused. I still was like, I shouldn't have left because I don't want to leave my son by himself this young and at any age, still to this day, I struggle the same way to let him go for half the time. But, and the attorneys, when I interviewed them, I got turned down for several of them. When I mentioned he already had an attorney and I said, oh, so-and-so attorney is representing him. And they will say, oh, that firm, you know what? I'm going to refer you to another attorney that might have the capacity and the bandwidth to deal with that attorney. Because they knew this person was also, to my luck, a high conflict attorney. And they said, this person, we can negotiate anything. I don't have the bandwidth. So I got turned down by a couple attorneys. So I ended up hiring one that took my case. Might not have been the best option for me or the best fit, but I just needed someone to represent me.
How much was that retainer?
$5,000. But it wasn't the only money I pay. I think ended up being way more than that.
What do you think the total is that you've spent to date on attorneys?
I was trying to do the math the other day, and it just made me sick to my stomach. And more, it's just closer $55,000.
I think it's important because what has dawned on me in this process, the costs are astronomical. Family law attorneys aren't trying to get to a solution.
No.
They're trying to create a workflow that gets them paid.
Yeah, and you have to hire him back for make modifications, which is exactly where I am right now.
I was going to say, Dorothy, so you agreed in February 2022, when Billy was almost 2, you agreed to a 50-50 parenting plan that was a 2-3-3 split or 2-2-3 split?
Two,
Sorry.
two, three.
I'm good.
Yes. It's
2-2-3 split.
Mm-hmm.
And I reviewed that parenting plan, and I'm just going to say that it's just ripe for conflict.
Oh, yes.
And what is also interesting to me in that parenting plan is that they acknowledge that it's ripe for conflict because they talk about communication between you, Dorothy, and Dick.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how you guys need to use a co-parenting app. You guys cannot communicate on the phone unless it's an emergency, all the while putting in a holiday schedule that includes Martin Luther King Day, exchange at 8 a.m., exchange at 8 p.m. Mother's Day, exchange at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Dad's birthday, exchange at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Mother's birthday, exchange at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. President's Day, exchange at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Spring break split in half. Easter, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Labor Day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Memorial Day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Halloween, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Thanksgiving, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And let me just say this, child's birthday split in half into 2 parts, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. with exchanges at each person's residence on a child's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Exchange on Christmas Day, 12 p.m. Thanksgiving break, not included. Any other kind of school break, not included. There's no graduating clauses for what was then a 2-year-old who was then going to be entering school and have other breaks involved. There was no switch to a 5-2-2 split, a graduated split to a week on, week off schedule. This plan is so ripe for conflict, which was acknowledged in the plan
Itself.
itself.
Yeah.
And I will say, because Dorothy, you have been so open with me and Jen about so much of this stuff. The last thing you have mentioned about any of this is the finances.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I've been trying to pry it out of you. And when I read, and I'm going to get emotional because those child support.
Yeah.
As a person who doesn't receive child support, as a person who bears the financial burden of my children, 100%, as a person who, when I request money for school supplies, is given some random calculation where they owe me $6.
And 8 cents, and I'll mail a check to you.
Yeah. As a person who's been written a check, who's then gone to the bank to stop that check, so I get charged a $35 fee. The child support portion of your parenting plan and what you are obligated to per agreement, mind you, and now court order, is that you're in charge of direct expenses for this child and the child support payment from a man who makes, I will say, close to $300,000 a year, who is an attorney.
That's what he's disclosed.
That's what he's disclosing. To you, who makes a third of that, is $300 a month. With that, you, Dorothy, are responsible for the wardrobe at both houses.
Both. Not just one when it's 50-50. Both.
And I have seen messages where Dick requires you to send him in better attire because he's not approving.
More formal attire for child's school pictures so they don't have self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
You're not only in charge of wardrobe at both homes, you're in charge of paying for all of school lunches. So if Dick doesn't want to make lunch that day, he can send the child to school and he can have lunch on you. You are in charge of paying for extracurricular activities, the equipment to support those extracurricular activities, anything community related you choose to involve your child in, including church, recreation, and anything left over. This is how your order reads. You are free to use for indirect expenses.
Exactly.
Well, you can go get your nails done. You can go buy steak. You can go to a 5-star restaurant with all that money.
Where did you vacation with that extra money?
I know.
And what's hard is even in Kansas that has a relatively lower cost of living, it is still an incredibly high cost of living in this current economy. Jenny Lynn gets $0. I am willing to bet you are out hundreds of dollars with this arrangement every month.
In a better financial position with zero child support than you are in Kansas with $300 a month.
It was designed that way. It was
Absolutely.
designed to punish you.
This was designed to punish you. And I'm sure after leaving a domestic violence situation, a situation where you were looking at your son, who was 1, growing up watching a toxic man abuse you, his mother, that the energy it takes to leave is so great and so astronomical because of all the things you've already talked about, the social pressure, the feelings of failure, the feelings of failing in front of your family, your community, yourself,
Not having your father.
Yep.
a recent loss.
Loss.
Like, then to fight about money feels like the last thing in the world
Exactly.
that's important. And something you haven't even brought up to me.
And
Yeah.
you're fighting a rich man.
Yep. And
Fighting a rich man with resources, it is ugly. And so when I think about, even if I were to just enroll one of my children in soccer and pay for their school lunches and pay for their clothes, because we know how fast these kids grow, especially a 5-year-old boy, you are out far more than $300 a month. Far more. There's no question.
And the control piece, right? So now he's allowed to tell you he needs clothes at his house. And he does it under what he calls a kid's newsletter. You guys communicate through a court-ordered app called OFW, and that was ordered in your final parenting plan. But the kids' newsletter came separately. It came a few months after your final parenting plan was out, and it came out of a court-ordered 16-week parenting class that you guys were ordered to take because of all the conflict very soon after you signed your final parenting plan, which you signed in February 2022. As of May 2022, you were right back in court. Your father had passed away. They were doing a celebration of life in Mexico, and Dick was contesting you taking Billy. No surprise here. Once Dick contested you taking Billy, you brought it back to court because you wanted to be sure you were able to legally take your child to your dad's memorial service. So, can you talk about that court action and what led you guys back into court so soon after your final parenting plan?
so according to parenting plan, by May, we supposed to give each other our summer time or the uninterrupted time that we get to spend with Billy to one another. It is also written in the parenting plan that you have to use the time from June 1st to August 1st. So initially I told him, hey, my father passed away on June 3rd, and we were going to do the celebration on June 3rd. And it was 2 years later, 2 years after he had passed away, but it was this, I'm talking post-COVID. This is the time when borders open back up, where we have the means to travel. My brothers, my mom, we were all going to be able to be together. And my son was little at the time. It was before 2, so I wouldn't have to pay for him still on the flight. So it was just right at that time that it was like, it is this time or it's never. So I told him I need to go to this family event that is happening on June 3rd, and it will help me. The flight was more affordable if I left May 29, and I just got the time to adjust with my kids for a couple days before the ceremony, and then leave 2-3 days later. After that, I was planning to stay for the full week at my mom's house and just be with family. And I said, but I will have to leave on May 29th or 28th, one of those two. And he said, I received your summer dates. I just wanted to let you know. And so I was like, oh, okay. That was easy. I went and purchased the plane tickets. I did everything. And 2 weeks before that, he said, I never said it was okay with you to go to Mexico with my son. You didn't do it like the parenting plan says. Summer dates should start on June 1st through August. But I will have to leave on May 29th. And you do not have my consent to take my son out of the country. He knew that was extremely important for me, and I didn't know what to do. So ended up after that, I didn't have an attorney. I didn't know what to do. And I just called the clerk office and I said, hey, what can I do if I need to file something that the parent makes sure he allows me to take him on vacation. Well, was it agreed upon? Well, yeah, I sent a message. I have that message saying, receive, your dates are received. I took that as a, yeah. She says, well, you can do an emergency motion to say that he needs to comply with already approved vacation. And at that time, I didn't have much resources, so that motion wasn't look the best. But to the best I could convey, I just say, here's dad on certain day said yes to my trip on next day. On 2 weeks prior, he says no, but this is very important for me to travel with my child. I was seeking the court to, blah, blah, listen to me. Anyway, we went to it, and his attorney and him were like, we don't know why we're here. We have no idea. And we're requesting for her to pay my attorney fees because he's making me use my attorney for no reason when we shouldn't be here. And I explained my situation, that I needed to go for my father's memorial celebration. And the judge basically just gave us a little speech how parenting plans should be a blueprint and not used for each other's threats. And then he said, but also I found disturbing, that someone is not letting the other party go to a memorial service. But also, I'm a little upset that this is left last minute and that you guys are not good for communicating to each other. And so it was my fault for not communicating properly and on time.
Yeah, let's read the judge said in their notes because I think it's really important because you wrote to him in an appropriate amount of time. He said received, then later said he didn't. So your only choice, since he was not going to be communicative about this or anything, was to go to court. And then the judge wrote in their note, okay, mother will be allowed to take child to Mexico on said dates for memorial service. Father to make up time of mom's next full weekend with child. The court has concerns regarding co-parenting efficiency given the nature of disputes. So the judge goes on to order BEH2O, which I'm guessing is the co-parenting class.
Yes.
That you guys were ordered to take. And then he also notes, continue to dispute this kind may result in LDCM, DPC appointment, or review of 50-50 parenting plan. Despite court granting the relief, appears that both parents share the blame in this problem festering until 2 days before travel.
So
Your
it's my
fault.
It's my fault for leaving it last minute. And that day, felt like I win, but at the same time, I felt shame. I felt like I was in the fault. I being yelled at by the judge. I felt terrible.
And the judge pointing out while scolding that 50-50 could be taken away. And as a mom and as a woman, I would have internalized that as, oh crap, I'm going to lose my kid. And the judge did allow you to go to the funeral service. That was the result of that hearing. But also, you were put into a co-parenting communication class where you had to sit side by side with Dick and work on your communication. So can you talk about that?
Of that, we were put into this co-parenting communication class for 16 weeks, which it cost thousands of dollars. He's sitting right next to me the entire time. It was the worst time. I was in that moment of my life where I felt I have made a lot of progress in everything that I lived with him. And it felt like I got a regression on day one, especially because it was a combination, that program where you do in a group setting, but then you have another day that you have to come back and you do one-on-one sessions with a therapist in a tiny little room. And he's sitting right next to me the entire time. And here I am trying to communicate and trying to comply with court orders, trying to be participative and trying to show that I am interested in having a good co-parenting relationship. But here it is, him having a screaming match with the therapist because the therapist is getting under his nerves and the therapist is challenging him. Yes. And he screamed at the therapist plenty of times. And
Wait, can you talk about that? Like, why was he yelling at that therapist?
yeah, so there was one activity that we were supposed to write in this whiteboard, things that I I think dad adds a positive in my son's life. And he has to do the same things that your co-parent adds positive to your son's life. He had to set some positive things about me as a mom that adds into his life. So obviously I went first and I was just like, well, he adds the sports aspect. He can teach him and spend that time one-on-one with sports. I'm just trying to participate. But then his turn is, and he just says, well, I grew up with a bunch of women, so adding that women perspective in the kid's life, that's enough. And the therapists were like, I'm asking you positive impacts that, she was like giving him more like an explanation. And then he's like, do you think I'm stupid? And so he started getting very defensive. And the therapist was just like, no, you're not talking to me this way. And as soon as I hear his voice raise, I start shaking in my seat. I start trembling. I start getting in shock mode, reliving all of those past experiences. Yeah. And then after everything, I came to the therapist and I said, I don't know how I can do this. I know it's court order, but I'm getting very triggered and it's not good for my health. It's not good for me leaving that place to go back to my kid, to be a mom, to be present and relive all that experience. And so I was asking, can we please just do group sessions instead of just one-on-ones? And she's like, no, I'm sorry. This is how the program goes. And this is like a bunch of excuses. And that's when I realized, why in the world the courts want to fucking get us to get along when two people can... It has to be both ways. The end of the class, the final activity was to create an agreement to get out of the water and improve our communication. So at the end of this class, they did say, Dorothy, what would you like to communicate about Billy in this communication? I just said, I really just want, if he's sick, just normal communication, right? Like if he's sick, if I can send a text message on the OFW or whatever it is, can I just get a response? He's like, he doesn't have a fever anymore. He's doing good. Or, hey, what time do you give him Tylenol last? So I was a kid with Tylenol. Just basic communication. But yeah, he took over control of that agreement and said, this is how I want communication to go. I need a kid's newsletter. I only need a kid's newsletter once every 2 weeks. Yes. This agreement from this therapy communication class came at the end of the class and said, this is how we are going to adjourn. You finish. You both parties signed this agreement that you guys are going to do your best to just abide by this until you guys get out of the water. I was just like, I'm signing anything to get out of here. Like to stop being in the same room with this person.
Who cares?
And now that has been used against me over and over and over for the last 3 years. That in BH2O program agreement, you signed that you were supposed to take the child to the doctor before dropping off to school. Or in the BH2O program, you're supposed to tell me when you are out of town. Even if he had Billy for his parenting plan, he wanted me to tell him where I was for a work trip or where I was for a girls' weekend or something. I needed to tell him. It's just the controlling, sick aspect of this agreement. And according to him, this agreement, is legally bound because the program was court order. And so since the judge ordered us to take these classes, this document he's constantly referring in the messages, it's legally bounding, according to him. And he's an attorney.
Well, if he's constantly referring to this agreement as legally binding, I've had a chance to look at it, and this man should be thrown in jail for the way he uses this cooperative parenting agreement to scold you, accuse you, lecture you, and just flat out be rude and mean, which is exactly the opposite of what this agreement says that both of you should be doing in your communication, including, and I quote, no accusations, lectures, narratives, unnecessary commentary, or excuses in our correspondence. There's also another part that says, we will not bring up or discuss the past. And finally, my most favorite clause, which is really clear and simple, having all communications strictly about Billy. They agree they will not bring third parties into our discussions by reference. I'm going to go back just for the last couple years. August 16th, 2024, this message has to do with extracurriculars. It starts off about a message about T-ball signups for what was then a 4-year-old and making sure that Dorothy was added to the team communication app, and it somehow spiraled into Dick stating, quote, Billy is not a burden and he's not mom's accessory to drag to her daughter and stepchildren's events. No one forced mom to marry a man with 2 children of his own. Billy currently has no choice but to live in a house with 4 children from 3 different fathers. Mom's excessive history of parenting plan violations, mom's never-ending pathological lying, and mom's revolving door of failed romantic relationships. And he goes on to say what he thinks of all that. So then, September 2nd, 2024, this message is about a routine doctor's appointment that Dorothy took Billy to. And Dick states, Mom used her personal health insurance for Billy's medical visit, which constituted financial fraud. Yeah, he accuses her of committing financial fraud over a doctor's appointment. The next message has to do with clothes. April 13th, 2026. And there's a series of messages here. The most recent one is Dad again requests that Mom provide age-appropriate formal clothing prior to picture day for Billy. There was another message back in July in 2023 that just indicates how long that this clothing exchange has been going on, where Dick states to Dorothy, Dad will continue to maintain a record for each instance when Billy is returned to Dad's custody and not dressed in proper age clothing by Mom. So apparently he's been keeping track of this clothing issue for years. So then, February 16th, 2026, this message has to do with Dorothy being able to talk to her son during Dad's time. Dick states, Dad is uncertain that it is reasonable for Mom to pursue unsolicited calls to Billy during Dad's scheduled parenting time, absent emergencies or special circumstances. Dad has never pursued unsolicited calls to Billy during Mom's scheduled parenting time, nor has Billy ever requested that Dad call Mom while Billy was in Dad's custody. So that's how a simple request for a phone call went. And then my personal favorite, this message, and I'm going to read this message to you in full because it has to do with the all-important children's haircuts.
We didn't mention that he's an attorney and a barber. He has 20 years of experience.
Of course he is. We're all barbers around here too. April 13th, 2026, Dick states, since Dad has over 20 years worth of experience cutting hair and Dad possesses all of the necessary equipment, and because Mom has not paid for a haircut for Billy since December 2022, Dad has cut Billy's hair ever since, with the exception of a handful of spontaneous incidences where Mom attempted yet failed to cut Billy's hair with any reasonable degree of skill. Dad has attached messages and photos documenting the aforementioned spontaneous instances when Dad repeatedly expressed his deep concern. Mom demonstrated little to no consideration for Billy's appearance or his self-esteem. Dad consistently asked Mom to never again attempt to cut Billy's hair, given the troubling results. Billy has repeatedly told both Mom and Dad that he only wants Dad to cut his hair and that he feels confident and handsome after Dad cuts his hair. Despite Billy's wishes over Easter weekend, Mom attempted to cut Billy's hair and butchered it yet again. When Dad picked Billy up on 4/6/26, Billy was nearly in tears and was clearly ashamed of his appearance and asked Dad to, and quote, please fix it. Dad has attached before and after photos to this message. Dad has painstakingly compiled this message thread for avoidance of all doubt regarding Mom's disturbing historical attempts at cutting Billy's hair. Not only has Mom saved countless dollars over the years when Dad has cut Billy's hair for free, but Billy has repeatedly expressed his clear and undeniable preference on the matter. Billy is not a plaything or an afterthought where a haircut can be started and then abandoned midway, in parentheses, which is very clearly what occurred during Easter weekend. Billy deserves to feel confident in his appearance and to enjoy a healthy self-esteem and avoid ridicule. Dad cannot stress the following to Mom any more clearly. Please never again attempt to cut Billy's hair yourself under any circumstances. Thank you.
Can I just read that again?
Yeah,
Please.
Historic, disturbing attempts at cutting Billy's hair.
Historic. Oh my goodness.
This is insanity. And I think Jen and I do a pretty good job of dramatizing stuff. We've been called salacious many times.
Daddy thinks this podcast is salacious.
This is next level. Like, I couldn't have come up with this here. The fact that Dick was able to give me this kind of content, chef's kiss. Thank you. I couldn't make this up.
Oh my gosh, and I haven't sent you the continuation of that drama. He keeps talking about it till like literally this past Monday. About the same same thing, even though I respond, and I offer, a good solution will be, let me take him to a professional once a month. Not you or I. I'll just take him.
Oh, no.
And our Billy requested to Dad only cut his hair. And
Well, yeah. No, it just is a favor to you and he's saving you
oh yeah,
money.
he's saving me hundreds of dollars from.
Yeah.
So these are just some snippets that I pulled out from the years of message that I got the luxury of going through. And yeah, well, we're going to dive into the fact that even though Dick is asking for sole custody of Billy, Dick's currently not even allowed inside Billy's preschool per the preschool's requirements. He's banned. He's banned, people. So with that, we'll see you back here for part 2. See you over the fence. Bye.
Sorry, Dorothy. Looks like you're still in Kansas. 50-50